Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I want to talk about the DCEU. Now, if you don't know what the DCEU is, it is the DC Extended Universe. It is the DC movies, kind of like DC's response to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, essentially. Now, what I'm about to say in this video is probably a very unpopular opinion. A lot of people will probably disagree with me. Maybe there'll be people who do agree with me, but nevertheless, my opinion is that I actually like the DC movies. I know, like, I hear nothing but a lot of people talking very negatively about them, but personally, like, at this point in time, I've seen all three of the movies that have currently come out, that including Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and Suicide Squad, and legitimately, I liked all of them. I've seen Man of Steel like twice, Batman v Superman and Suicide Squad I've only seen once each, but I really like them. I get it, a lot of people don't like the DCEU for many different reasons. They don't like the tone of the movies. They feel like they're darker and they're not really, there's no fun in them, which I disagree. Like, I had a lot of fun watching them. Like, maybe, you know, because I guess to me, like, I saw those fun moments in those movies that's sprinkled in there, and it's like I enjoyed them, and it's like, I guess to me the whole thing, like the tone of it, it's fine, and I think the entire movies all across the board are fun, but I guess it's maybe there's too much of a serious tone. It was kind of a turn off for most people, but for me, I like it. I just naturally look at movies very differently from most people, just because to me, I just look at a movie and it's like, oh yeah, I walked away from that liking it and enjoying it. So that's all a movie has to like do for me. I don't look at every movie as like, oh, like breaking it down piece by piece like this and just like, oh, this is that, blah 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 blah. To me, I just simply watch a movie and enjoy it. I'm always invested in every movie I watch, which isn't the case for some people. Some people, they look at it and they're like, oh, I literally had to sit through that movie and it was just, it sucked. Even like, you know, people have their problems with like the large like first half of like Batman v Superman. To me, I enjoy that part. It's just, obviously you enjoy the second half of it more because that's when things really kick up, but to me, I really enjoy the first part of it because of the build up and everything. But I mean, let me just kind of run through some different things about, you know, stuff. Obviously I've just talked about the tone. One other thing is that people didn't like about the DCEU so far is Batman himself. Obviously, a lot of people like Ben Affleck. They think he does a very good job as Batman. I agree. I think he does a good job as Batman and Bruce Wayne. But you know, a lot of people kind of like the similar situation with Man of Steel. Like, people didn't like this interpretation. I think everyone's entitled to their own interpretation of a particular project, because everyone's going to take their own approach to it. This whole situation that's been set up, like the DC heroes that have been set up in the movies, I kind of like the tone that's kind of been set for them. I like this versions of them. Like, take Batman for example. A lot of people have a complaint with the fact is that Batman straight up kills a lot of people. To me, I justify that as being like, well, this is Batman after being Batman for a while. Like, at the very, like, you know, the theory is just always like, oh, he's been Batman for maybe 20 odd years, maybe a little less, but he's been Batman for a while. This is Batman after a lot of stuff has come his way. Obviously this is sometime, you know, Batman v Superman takes place sometime after he lost to Robin. The thought was kind of like, oh, that particular Robin was Jason Todd. I mean, as we know, Jason Todd got it the hardest out of probably anybody. That was what goes down with him is pretty rough. Whether or not that happened is what actually happens in the DCEU, that's still up to debate. It does beg the question if that is supposed to be Jason Todd. I mean, because who's to say it couldn't be another Robin? If it is Jason Todd, is there a Dick Grayson / Nightwing around? And if that was Jason Todd, does that mean there's going to be a Tim Drake in the future? Just kind of throwing that out there. But yeah, like, to me, like, this is an older Batman who's been Batman for a while, and he's become, well, jaded. The fact of the matter is he's been doing this for such a long time, and he's lost people, and it's just kind of like, you know, just like any superhero gets to that point where just like, maybe what I'm doing isn't good enough. Maybe I need to change up my tactics. Maybe I need to start cutting people slack because I was such a quote-unquote nice guy, because I handled things in a just, oh, locking criminals up type of sense, which he still does to a certain extent, but it's also like he doesn't shy away from killing people. I mean, because it also makes you wonder how many of these people who've seen this movie have seen the Arrow TV show. Because like, if you look at that first season of Arrow, let's not forget Oliver was straight up dropping bodies left and right, and I'm sure that's not necessarily canon to that character, like, especially when you come to like all the versions of him in the comic books. But you know, that the show has a very darker tone, And so, you know, he has his reasonings for it, because like for him it's straight up about saving Starling City, currently Star City, trying to save his home from all these people who are working to basically destroy it, essentially. I mean, and even then, that's still something Oliver deals with. Even future seasons, he would still, there'd be occasions he tried to change, and that's something I think will happen with Batman too. Is like, you know, with everything that's happened, you know, after his experience with Superman, I think he will kind of change and kind of go back to being the Batman he originally was when he started all of this. I mean, granted, because it really depends on what they do with the standalone Batman movies, which are called The Batman, which is going to be very confusing because there was an animated series a couple years ago called The Batman. So now I could be completely wrong about this, but to me, I think the standalone Batman movies are actually going to take place sometime before Man of Steel. This is before he became, you know, jaded. But I mean, who knows? Maybe they're actually set in the present timeline of, you know, after everything that's going down, whether it's the Batman v Superman or whether it's Justice League, depending on where they kind of slate those movies. So we'll kind of see him being the Batman I think a lot of people wanted to see, or think Ben Affleck's Batman should be. And to me, that kind of, you know, coincides with Arrow in the TV shows, because it's like after a certain thing happens in the first season, Oliver kind of changed his ways and stopped killing people. I mean, granted, there are occasions that came up he killed people anyway, just because, well, spoiler alert for the current season of Arrow, that's coming. There's kind of a backlash from that. He's kind of having to suffer the ramifications for it, though. I mean, granted, who's to say a lot of people who watch Arrow didn't have a problem with it? That just, I mean, to me, I didn't. So that's, I guess that's another reason why I'm okay with Ben Affleck's Batman being as destructive and as just kind of like hardened in a sense. As I'm kind of okay with him being like that because I've experienced Arrow. But like I said, who's to say most people like that, and who's to say a lot of people who watch Arrow actually watch the DC movies? I mean, there's probably a lot of people who watched Batman v Superman who have never seen Arrow. Because also along the same lines, it's like for people, this is their first introduction into the DCEU's Batman. Which I kind of go back to it. This is him after many years of being Batman. He's jaded. So like I said, going back to the standalone movies, like if they are set in the past, I'm sure you'll get the Batman that you kind of wanted to see in Batman v Superman, just because it's like things played out to kind of push him to be the Batman that you've seen so far. And then there's also the whole situation with Superman, the whole Man of Steel situation about all that destruction cost. To me, I justify that as being like, well, he's literally been Superman for what? 2 days? He literally learned how to fly 2 days ago, and now he has to fight against other people he didn't know existed that have the same powers and abilities he does. I mean, when you think about it, the whole premise behind Superman is that basically he's a god amongst men, and it's like you have multiple gods facing off against each other. It's like a city being heavily destroyed. To me, that's just kind of like it's bound to happen in a situation like that. Now I know they caught a little flack for it, or not a little, a lot of flack for it in Man of Steel, and they try to kind of pull it back and justify it in Batman v Superman, which I love the justification. I mean, I don't think they needed to justify themselves. I'm sure a lot of people will heavily disagree, and that's fine. But to me, I don't think they needed to, because it's like these are super powerful beings going at it. Like a city being destroyed, I'm not surprised. He's had his powers for a while, but he's never had to face, straight up fight someone on equal terms with himself. I mean, he's never really had to fight in general. Like any situation he's ever come across, he's always had the advantage because if he's always stronger than everyone that he's ever come across. But this is him straight up having to fight for the first time. So a lot of that stuff, yeah. And then you take something like Suicide Squad. Like Suicide Squad wasn't what a lot of people wanted it to be, thought it was going to be what it could have been. Obviously there was a lot of stuff behind the scenes that it's, you know, not just from like a movie standpoint. There's even, you know, some of the actors, you know, the final product wasn't what they felt like the direction it was going to take. It's not, you know, you take Jared Leto's stance on it. But to me, it's like not necessarily that movie's fault. It's just, it seems like there was a lot of stuff that was kind of like about it. But to me, I still walked away from it liking it. I liked a lot of the characters they set up. I liked what ended up going down in the movie. And I know a lot of people had their complaints, but like I'm fine with Jared Leto's Joker. I mean, really, he's in a tough spot, because it's like, you know, everyone's like, oh, what's his Joker going to be like against Heath Ledger's Joker? It's like, oh, but his Joker isn't Heath Ledger's Joker, nor is his Joker even close to Mark Hamill's Joker. But at the same time, it's just, you know, everyone's got their own interpretation of each particular character. And I feel like, I don't know how Jared Leto is going to feel about the DCEU in the future, whether he's going to reprise his role as a Joker in the future. I'd like to see him as a Joker and see, like, you know, what else he might do with the character. This is just like a one shot. Like, who's to say like the character won't develop into something else, or maybe he'll kind of be able to reinvent the character, because like he's talked about the fact is that there were multiple takes of him being like, okay, trying to do different stuff with the Joker, so he did different stuff here and there, and it's like, well, let's get an opportunity to see what some of those other different things could be, and he could easily be a Joker that people like. I mean, I do think there are some people who walked away from that situation actually liking Jared, his Joker the best. I really love the whole him and Harley Quinn's relationship, and not just them, just all the characters in general, just their demeanor and everything. To me, it was a fun movie. Like I said, I'm sure a lot of people would disagree with that. Like, a lot of people I've heard talk about it, it's just like, oh, it's like I was just waiting for the movie to be over. And it's like, I mean, I sat through it and enjoyed every moment of it. There are points I was like, I actually wanted a little bit more like added to the movie, just to be like, for certain things, just certain characters kind of things. But I'm very curious to see what the DCEU will do in the future, like where even these characters will pop up. I mean, granted, because these movies are just kind of like bleh to most people, it'll probably be a while before we even see like any of the characters in Suicide Squad pop up in anything else DC related, especially like, the standalone Batman movies. It's gonna be interesting to see like where they will all fall in that, because the first Batman movie, like, currently at this time, like, Deathstroke is set to be the main antagonist, so I'm just curious about that. I mean, the next movie in the DC lineup that's coming out is Wonder Woman, which from the trailer, like, I'm super psyched for, because Wonder Woman is a superhero I don't know that much about. My only experience with Wonder Woman has been the animated stuff, whether it's Justice League Unlimited, also the whole Justice League Flashpoint movie as well, which granted, that's a different interpretation of Wonder Woman too. I mean, really, that's because of the whole Flashpoint circumstances, but still, I really like Gal Gadot in Batman v Superman, so I'm super excited to see what she kind of does with the character when she has a full-blown movie. I'm very interested to learn a lot about her background. I mean, because you take something in Batman v Superman, like the whole like, oh, finding out that she doesn't age like a normal person, like I did not even know that about her whole character background, so that was kind of interesting. So, and then not even just them, I'm super excited to see what happens with Barry Allen, because I'm really in love with the Flash because of the TV show. I'm not gonna walk into it and be like, oh man, this isn't Grant Gustin's CW Flash. This is a different Flash. This isn't the Flash I know and love. It's like, no, to me, I look at it as the same situation of kind of like how they presented it on Flash. It's like there are multiple Earths. So to me, the DCEU could be like, hey, this is on a different Earth from those Flash. Like, oh, Flash takes place on Earth 1. Maybe these particular movies are like, hey, this is Earth 5. And the fact of the matter is, it's very close to Earth 1 on the Flash, but it's like, it's slightly different. Just because there are a multitude of worlds, and I'm sure when it comes to Flash, you'll probably like push towards that and everything. I mean, I didn't realize that's what they were setting up, because at the time I didn't know about it, but because my first experience with Flashpoint is the Flash TV show, and like I've said before, I know what they're doing, what they did on the Flash with their whole Flashpoint setup. It's very different from the comic book, and like I said, any slight knowledge I have of Flashpoint is also based on the Justice League animated movie about it, but I also know even that's a very probably cut down version of it, because for one, it's kind of a one-off thing, because I do know that there are ramifications for Flashpoint, just like there are in the TV show. There are ramifications for it in the DC universe in general as well. Super excited to see what they do with Aquaman and Cyborg too. So I completely skipped the point I was trying to make earlier. The fact is that apparently the whole Barry's situation in Batman v Superman, I didn't really understand it at this time, but now I do. That apparently that's them setting up Flashpoint for the DC universe as well. But then you also, like I said, you have to break it down and determine, like, it depends on where those movies take place in the grand scheme of things. Like, maybe Aquaman, Flash, and Cyborg's movies take place before the events of Batman v Superman, or maybe they coincide like afterwards. Like I said, it depends on where each of these respective movies takes place in the whole timeline of the DCEU. I mean, really, at the end of the day, these are all just my opinions, my thoughts, and I'm just kind of talking to you guys. Like, this is how I feel about the DCEU. Let me know in the comments down below, how do you feel about it? Do you like the DCEU? Do you hate it? Are you excited for any of the movies? Let me know in the comments down below. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.